Hi, this is Shauna. Before we get to today's guest, I want to take a minute to learn more about you, the listener. We've put together a short survey at fueltalent.com/podcast to gather information on who's listening and to give you a chance to make suggestions and comments about the show. I want What Fuels You to be a great resource for you and your interests, and I hope these interviews give you practical advice along with inspiration for your career and life. Help us continue to serve you better by going to fueltalent.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Now let's start today's show. Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Erin Quick. Erin is the co-founder and CEO of PairTree, with more than 20 years of global brand marketing experience, and more importantly, as a two-time adoptive mother. Erin is a leader in the movement to modernize adoption in the United States. Previously, Erin co-founded Stoke Strategy, a Seattle-based brand strategy firm, which she led for 12 years. She began her marketing career at Addison in San Francisco and New York, where she worked on global branding for Domino's Pizza, Merrill, Lynch, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Erin is a recipient of the Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award, and most recently, PairTree, under Erin's leadership, was selected to participate in the 2021 TechStars Seattle Accelerator. She is currently a Visionary Voices member, speaker with All Raise, guest lecturer at Brown University and the University of Washington, and Erin lives on Bainbridge Island with her husband and two children. Welcome, Erin. So good to see you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
We're going to start with some rapid fire. What I always ask this because selfishly I want tips, but what's your favorite movie?
Oh, I mean, anything with Julia Roberts, usually.
Oh, I love her.
Or Jennifer Aniston. I'm a rom-com gal, just so I can check.
Oh, yeah. Like the Sleepless in Seattle vibe, or
any of those.
Yeah. Oh, I love them too, the feel-good movies. So we've lived in the same cities, San Francisco, Seattle, and New York. And I'm
great.
Curious, which one's your favorite?
New York in my 20s.
Me too. I did New York in my 20s and 30s.
I think everyone should do a stint in New York in your 20s. But I think the reason I left New York so much was because when I first moved there, I was like, no one knows who I am. No one cares what I do. And then you hit a certain point in that city where you're like, no one knows who I am and no one cares about me here. So that's when I moved back to Seattle. So I don't know. San Francisco is a wonderful city too.
It's a tough one, right?
I couldn't do New York with kids. People that can do New York with kids, I'm in awe.
I did New York with kids for 5 years. And then when it came time for kindergarten, we were like, wait, what? How do we do this? Okay, what's your biggest fear?
Something happening to my kiddos.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And also a plane landing in water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Are you a good swimmer?
No.
Yeah. Well, that means you're probably scared to fly, which I never was. And now I'm becoming a little bit. I don't like being away from the kids on an airplane.
Yeah. And now I cry when I'm flying without my kids because I'm like, what if?
I get it. Okay. Are you water or mountains?
Water.
And who's your favorite female performer, like singer?
Beyonce.
Nice. Sasha Fierce. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
What have you watched or listened to or read over the past couple of years that you would recommend?
Oh, favorite book by far in the last couple of years was Untamed, Glennon Doyle. That book changed my life a little bit.
Yeah. It gives you that feeling that you were talking about in New York when you first get there, of like, I can be and say and do whatever I want because I'm slightly anonymous.
Yeah. And just that you have, like, especially women, like we have a wild inside of us that we tamper or tamp down. And it's just like, don't do it. Don't tamper it.
Let your light be on and don't apologize for it. Okay, so tell me, where are you from? Tell me about your childhood a little bit.
I grew up in Spokane, Washington.
And what were you kind of into or passionate about when you were little?
Sports. We were big time soccer players, both my sister and I.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, I mean, but everything like softball or soccer, volleyball,
Nice.
all the sports.
Sporty spice. Okay, that overlaps with me. I was an athlete too.
Okay.
And tell me about your parents. Are they also entrepreneurs, or kind of where did you get your entrepreneurial bug?
Yeah, so I guess kind of, so my parents both masters in public health from Berkeley, and super hippie. So
in Spokane, interesting. I would think they'd be in like Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, well, they're from Southern California, and but they lived in Guatemala for a long time, and they were opening up clinics in Guatemala just to make sure plantation workers had access to basic health benefits like flu shots. In fact, my sister was born down there, and the village named her Ishmukene.
Oh my gosh, this is the coolest.
Yeah. So Ishmukene is a Mayan goddess, and she's the goddess of the earth. And so they left when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me and moved to Spokane.
So how did they land there of all places?
My dad got it was like a health administrator job in Spokane.
Yeah. Are they still doing that industry? Are they still in healthcare?
No. So the reason that they ended up moving, I think they probably would have stayed in Guatemala for it. My dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh no.
Right before I was born.
No.
I know. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And so they moved to Spokane just, I think, to be in the States and have access to better healthcare for him. And the good news is, I mean, he was given 5 years to live, and he lived 14 years. And so, so my middle name is also, I'm so chill, which is a funny middle name to have.
Wait, literally, I thought you were describing yourself as so chill. No, your middle name is so chill. Oh my God. I'm not so chill, so that would not work for me, but are you so chill? You got the hippy dippy parents?
I'm pretty, there's not a lot that'll rile me up. No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not chill, but I also am really good under pressure. So I get that. Like, that's how you would describe yourself. But I do feel like I do relate, I guess, to a little bit of that hippie vibe.
I have some of that in me for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. And what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
Oh, easily, hands down, an interior designer.
Oh, well, I can see you've got cool art behind you. Do you have like an interior design flair in your house?
No, if I could tour you around my house now, you'd be like, really? Interior design?
You're like, good thing you didn't pursue that.
Yeah, no, I wanted to be that so badly. And then I just kind of waned when I got to college.
Yeah. My daughter, my third born, put that in her 5th grade graduation. They asked everybody, she said, an interior designer in Hawaii. I'm like, sign me up. That sounds so fun
already.
And what were your family values? Like, what did you personally value as a kid?
We grew up with like Zen sayings, Zen Buddhist sayings. So we kind of grew up with this, and I still, I mean, I use it today, but I've taught it to my kids now, but it's 4 phrases that were just drilled into us. You show up, meaning like be present, pay attention, tell the truth, and don't be attached to the outcome.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I've done, I think now maybe 160 interviews on this podcast. And you're the first one when I ask about family values to be so clear. And what a nice gift from your parents, and a great gift as far as like generational clarity around values. That's awesome. And so how did you end up at Western Washington? How did you decide law school?
So my high school had sororities in it.
Oh, wait, what? What high school?
I know. Lewis and Clark in Spokane. We were like,
okay. I think my dad went there. I think that's where he went.
Yeah. So we didn't have fraternities. We just had sororities. There was 2 sororities. And so I kind of lived the Greek system in high school.
Oh my God, your parents must have been like, what?
Well, they look back and I'm like, Mom, what were you doing? Like they literally showed up like in rush week. They show up to your house, throw a pillowcase over you and take you off for all these like awful initiation events. And my mom was like, bye, honey. Like, why would you let me? But anyhow, I needed to go to a state school. We didn't have a ton of money. And so it was like UW and WSU, but they both had Greek systems. And I was like, not really into it. And then the honest answer is I picked Western because it was close to Canada and the drinking age was 19.
Oh my gosh, I love you. That's hilarious.
So I was like,
And how do you feel now looking back and reflecting on that choice? Was that the right choice for you?
no. In fact, I dropped out my sophomore year because
Yeah. And is that when you went to New York?
that's when I started working in Seattle. I was like, I'll just take some time off. And so I started working. My very first job was actually at the Washington Athletic Club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so I started filling in for somebody on maternity leave, and I just loved work. Like the minute I started
Yeah.
working, I was like, this is where I need to be. Like, this is how I'm going to learn. I
Yeah.
loved making money.
And my oldest is a junior. He's looking at colleges. And I'm like, the pressure on these kids these days of like the importance of what decisions you make. I'm like, you're going to be just fine.
You're going to be
Just, it's
fine.
going to be good. And he is a little bit in that mindset of like, shouldn't I just work? Because there is this correlation of like, unless you're going to like a school that's got some sort of crazy notoriety, like an Ivy,
Yeah.
that kind of parallels into some crazy industry or job, which people
Or
tend
alumni.
to still, there's an alumni network. It's a little bit like, yeah, just get your ass to work, you know? So what did you end up studying that gave you kind of a foundation for such an amazing career?
Oh, I mean, I just took the prerequisites when I was at Western just because, and the reason I ended up dropping out was because I got the note, like, you have to declare a major. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to go experiment with the world for a little bit.
Yeah. So you did the Washington Athletic Club in Seattle.
Yeah. And one of the members there, he owned an advertising agency in Seattle, and he recruited me out of the WAC. And he was like, please come work for us at the advertising agency. And so I was kind of the marketing coordinator for their ad agency.
Is that the Addison job?
No, that was, it's not around anymore. It was Horton, Lance and Lowe, and then it evolved into HL2.
Oh, okay.
It was one of the big ones in Seattle for a number of years. And then it went out of business. I don't know.
Yeah. And what type of role did you take there? And I guess, I mean, you ended in such a high profile branding role.
Well, I was the marketing coordinator for the ad agency, and I was there for about a year. And the partner there was like, you ask too many, like, you're not superficial enough for advertising. You want to know why people are making the decisions they're making. And he's like, you need to go into brand strategy. And so he was the one that kind of started, put San Francisco in my head. Like, if you want to be in brand strategy, you have to go work for one of the big globals in San Francisco or New York.
Yeah. So
he kind of got into my head, and that's when I started interviewing for jobs in San Francisco, and I landed at Addison, which was the very best place for me to land.
And so what was I'm always curious, like the process of that. Are you sending your resume in cold? Are you working through networks? How did you get the job?
That was cold resume. And I never paid attention to like what are the requirements for the job. I've never paid attention to that. Because all of them at that time too, it doesn't exist anymore, but all of them were required a bachelor's in something. So I was like, meh.
Yeah.
So I didn't bluff.
Some companies, when I lived in New York and worked in New York for, over 10 years, a lot of companies they said it's a requirement. And I was like, this person is a rock star, so efficient, so capable. And sometimes it's the story that matters, like why they dropped off. It's not like that correlates with somebody not being driven. So I agree. It's kind of mellowed because the message is a little bit more around grit and attitude.
For sure.
But interesting. So you ended up there for years.
I was there in San Francisco. I got down there right as kind of like .com boom was happening. It was so
what years? Because I was in San Francisco during the .com boom.
99 to 2001.
Okay.
So it was like boom and bust.
So you came right as I was leaving, because I was there in 94 to 99.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you were there kind of like for sure. Boom.
Oh yeah. And I was recruiting. I mean, it was ridiculous because companies were like, there's a pulse, she's breathing, I'll hire her. I mean, there was such a war on talent, kind of like today.
Yeah.
But the companies were so cool and sexy to sell. And candidates were just like, oh yeah, I'll go on that interview. Like every company was so exciting. So,
and all the fun IPO parties.
Oh yeah. Like the best. Oh my gosh, we lived similar lives. So then that company took you to New York, because that's what happened for me. That's the coolest. Yeah,
bust happened, and the company went from like 75 people to like 15 overnight. And I remember sitting in the conference room, and they were explaining to the partnership was explaining what was going on and that they couldn't people on. And I remember being afraid I was going to be fired. And one of the partners leaning over and whispering in my ear, like, you don't make enough money to be fired.
You're not so expensive. It doesn't matter on the balance sheet so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're like, do you want to stay on here or
a little different than like you're indispensable, which is kind of what they were saying also. The combo of your comp with your, contribution.
Yeah. So they offered me that you can stay here or we'll move you to New York and you can work out of the New York office.
Well, you're like done and done.
Yeah. That's not even a question.
Adventure. What did you think about that culture as far as what you learned that you've been able to transition to your company?
Oh, well, understanding the fundamentals of brand strategy, not like, logo veneering, but like the fundamentals of like building, like starting at brand values and what's the organizing idea behind us that makes us different, kind of the why, and getting to see into the guts of all the companies that we worked with in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what, where companies fail, where they do really well. To me, that was like the best education I could have received.
Yeah. And so why did you ultimately leave?
Well, so I was in New York for about 5 years and I was dating somebody really seriously and he was a born and raised New Yorker. And he had one of those, giant crazy jobs at JP Morgan. And he came home one day and said, we got to get out of the city. We can't live this life. It's too much. It's too crazy, too intense. And I was like, let's go to Seattle.
So you brought him here.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. Within a month.
I'm sorry. Another correlation. I married a New Yorker and brought him here.
Well, I didn't marry that New Yorker.
You didn't marry that New Yorker. Well, I'm just saying the bringing of a human out of New York is like, that doesn't necessarily happen. My husband just got back last night and brought black and white cookies from New York and bagels.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to eat them, but my goodness, I do miss the food, the pizza, the bagels. So you didn't marry that guy, but it brought you back to Seattle. So that's our win. We got to inherit you back to Washington, but you made a big transition to the American Marketing Association. How did that work?
Well, I hopped on the board of the American Marketing Association almost as like I don't even know what the marketing scene in Seattle is like. And so I want to get to know everybody.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. And it was fun. Like I got to do programming. So I got to bring in kind of baller people into the group and that was really fun. And nobody had been doing brand strategy. Tons of advertising agencies here in town, but no one was doing like true brand strategy except for this one guy in one graphic design firm that everyone in town told me to go talk to. And
who's that?
His name was Dave Miller. He's still doing brand strategy in Seattle. And so he and I had the chance to work together for about a year before we decided to go start our own firm. And so in 2007, we started our own company called Stoke. That was strictly focused.
I loved that in the intro and I was reading about it. And it's like, you just became after that founder. You're like, I am now the entrepreneur.
Not intentionally. I never had this, like, I will be an entrepreneur one day. It's just kind of like I can do that. We should go do that.
Well, if you look at your background, it really does match your risk profile. Some people never leave. Like, I'm sure you have friends from high school who are still in Spokane and you're like, I lived in San Francisco, probably not knowing a ton of people. Then I went to New York. Yeah. And I did the same. And I look back, I'm like, well, that was just a no-brainer. But a lot of people don't have that risk profile also to transition to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So the risk in me, there's so few decisions in life that you can't walk back. That's how I.
Or just undo. Even that's what my message is to my son about college. I'm like, if you hate it, then you'll transfer. Like, people do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so tell me about that company.
That was also, that was like an MBA. So he and I grew that for 13 years together. And we started working kind of unbeknownst to us. Most of the advertising agencies in town asked us to be kind of their in-house strategy team when they were going and pitching projects. So that's how we grew. Copacino Fujikato, if you know that advertising agency in town, they housed us for the first year of our business, and then it's kind of off to the races. So
yeah. So you were in a position to be creating revenue kind of early days, which helps.
We never had a non-profitable month.
That's amazing. So you ended up doing that for a little over 12 years from my notes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was the exit there? How did you kind of move on?
So I sold my share to Dave in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
just because small kids, we wanted to move out to an island, and, pre-pandemic, it didn't make sense in terms of the structure that we currently had. And I wanted to focus on other things, including PairTree. PairTree was had been in my mind.
Yeah.
Because while I was running Stoke, I was in my mid 30s, and I was like, we'll have babies later. My mom didn't have me until she was 42. So I just
oh my gosh. 42. Yeah, that's
amazing. Tell you, just
hippies.
Yeah. So I delayed this idea of getting pregnant until it was just too late for us to do it naturally. My eggs got too old.
Yeah.
So, we tried to get pregnant for about a year and nothing worked. And then we went through the years and years and way too much money in all the IUI, IVF junk. And after my third miscarriage, I was like, well, both of us, my husband and I, were like, we can't do this anymore. This feels like we're running up against a wall. And honestly, it just felt kind of broken.
Yeah, physically. That makes sense.
And emotionally.
Where does PairTree fit in with Facet?
Facet was just, I couldn't let go of my brand strategy stuff. So it was just, I ended up doing just some consulting stuff. So Facet was just a little brief consulting brand strategy.
Yeah. It's a perfect transition for you though, to kind of take a deep breath, figure it out. Yeah. And then what I love is that this situation that so many women are in, and it's kind of not talked about until you meet someone else who's also gone through it. And then it's like a flood of conversations because it is such a crazy issue. My friend Jake, I have to remember the name of the company. They started a company that also addresses infertility, puts doctors, it's like Yelp for fertility. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
But it was also a person who just kind of took lemons, made lemonade, and said, instead of being victimized by this whole thing, which can be so traumatizing, I'm going to find a solution for people who end up needing to take another route.
Yeah. Well, so when we finally made the jump, like, okay, IVF doesn't make more sense. And we'd always said we wanted to adopt. And so when we made that leap into the world of adoption, I was blown away. It's like taking, a step back in time in terms of the process that is.
It's so antiquated. My friend went through it and was like putting together a book to kind of sell her family, and then was on the waitlist, finally got a beautiful baby boy. The mother was in the room with them. Mm-hmm. And I was having anxiety as a person who's never been through it. Like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I help support her? But also I was panicking that the mom, once the baby was born, would change her mind. Because don't they get a certain window? Because I've heard of that happening a lot.
It happens 20% of the time. And they do, depending on what state you're in, they have anywhere from 24 hours to 30 days.
I think my friend's was 30 days. I don't know if that's a Washington thing, but I think it was 30 days. And I felt so anxious for her. It's like, I just can't imagine that heartbreak.
Yes.
And like the Buddhism part, I guess you have to not have the attachment to the outcome. You just have to kind of let it float by and let the universe kind of work its way through it. That's crazy.
That was my mantra, just again and again and again. So we went through two really wonderful adoption processes. It's so wonderful, in fact, that we used a different method of adopting called self-navigating, which we can talk about when we get into the PairTree stuff. But it basically means we don't use an agency. We navigate it ourselves. We hire our own team, and we go connect with an expectant mom versus being introduced to one by an agency.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, we're in the PairTree zone, so you can expand on that because we have so much to talk about. I'm slightly fascinated, and I love that you're such an open book. It's I hope that lots of people listen to this podcast who need your voice.
Yeah. So when we decided to make the leap and we jumped into adoption, we looked at all the options, and an adoption agency, to use them, is on average $40,000 to $60,000. To adopt an infant in the US, which is what we wanted to do.
Wow. And are you on the hook in like a down payment way?
Big time. Yeah. And it's a lot of like upfront cost.
And then you're not sure if there's going to even be a successful outcome.
Yeah. And so that felt strange to me. And because we'd spent, $75,000 in IVF, we weren't like raring to spend another 60 in this like weird antiquated method.
Yeah.
So we luckily had some family friends that told us that you don't have to use an agency, that you can build your own team. And so that felt better to us because we knew we would probably fight harder than anyone else would for us.
Yeah.
And
but also I'm sure that's expensive.
No, if you do it that way, the costs drop from 40 to 60 down to on average 15.
Okay. Still a lot of money. I mean, if you think about families that are like in your situation that can't afford it. So my understanding is that it's a platform for families and expectant mothers. And I'm curious how exactly it works and what the business model is.
Yeah. So for on any adoption journey, there are 3 major milestones that, according to today's standards, we actually see 4 major milestones, but the way they work is if you're an adoptive family, the first step is you have to be approved to adopt. And that is this paperwork laden, administrative hoop filled, awful process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be approved in your state. And so each state has different requirements. And then the second milestone is you have to match. So adopting family and expectant mom have to connect and like each other and want to move forward. And then 3 is you go through a legal process. And so what we do is we just we have services. So we on, step 1, we created the first and only online home study that maps to state requirements. So people can get approved online in a much more streamlined, much more enjoyable way via PairTree. And then matching, which is step 2, that's, if you think about online dating, it's very similar to that. So adoptive families build profiles and then expectant moms sort through those profiles based on what's most important to them.
Mm-hmm. Can it go both directions?
No, only because there are so many more adopting families than there are expectant moms. And so
they would be like hoarded. They would be like inundated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are they anonymous until they match?
They're anonymous until they reach out, and then they can just kind of unlock more information about themselves as they're feeling comfortable.
And is there a prerequisite as far as what they have to disclose, or is it like dating where you can stay kind of like, hey, we're just having coffee and then lunch and then maybe a dinner and
It's the latter. It's more like dating.
That's so fascinating.
One of the problems in adoption are people will pose as expectant moms to get time, money, or attention out of adoptive families. And so we do ask our expectant moms to go through a couple processes to verify that they are who they say they are, so that we can kind of weed out any of the bad apples. But for the most part, and then we have a messaging platform, so they message back and forth with each other until they decide like, yes, you're for me and you're for me. And then we have a network of the very best adoption attorneys in all 50 states that we recommend them to if they're not already working with someone.
That's fascinating. And do you do analysis or anything on like why expectant mothers are parting ways with their baby? And does that matter to the kind of decision to match?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think birth moms are super young or they're in high school, and they're just not. The average age is 24 to 36 and they already have 1 kid. So they know how hard it is to be a parent, and they know, so they can't like. Younger people, typically we see them like kind of romanticize parenting, like this will be great. And, anyone that's a parent knows like, yes, there are those parts, but it's also very, very hard day to day. So most birth moms are like, they're older, they're already a mom, and they know that they don't have the resources to do it again. And for whatever reason, they don't believe in terminating, whether it's religious or just their own.
So interesting. And the first part that you talked about in the 3 steps, the filling out the crazy amounts of paperwork, what kind of stuff do you have to disclose? Do you have to disclose your financial situation and your ethnicity, and like what's in that packet?
Oh, it's like a super in-depth interview. So you have to disclose, your autobiographical history, kind of your family of origin, like how did you grow up? What are your connections to your extended family? And if there's 2 of you adopting, you're both doing this. You have to provide personal references, typically 3 to 5, employer references. You have to get a physical from a doctor to make sure you are healthy enough to be parenting, financial information. So tax returns, you have to be FBI background checked, go through child abuse and neglect background checks.
Oh my goodness.
It's pretty, and that's why a lot of people, one of the things that we saw as an opportunity in this industry as a whole was a lot of people would be like, yeah, I want to adopt. And then they look into it and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is
it feels too vulnerable and too disclosing.
Yeah.
And so interesting.
That's why we tried to make the process to be approved to adopt much more efficient and streamlined. So people aren't concentrating on all the administrative junk and they can just concentrate on, why they want to parent.
Yeah. So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what exactly is the business model? How do you make money?
So two primary ways. So one, and they align to our product. So the first one is a home study so families pay us a couple $1,000s to go through that process. And then we pay the providers that are the actual home study providers, the social workers that are helping families step through that. And then the second one is on matching. So where a lot of agencies will charge, $25,000 to match somebody, we decided let's just charge a monthly subscription fee. So families pay $75 a month to have an online profile for as long as they need.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And is that profitable?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you bootstrapped this business, right?
Well, we bootstrapped. That's one of the reasons I started Facet was because I was like, honey, I've got this idea and I'll pay for it, in terms of, and so all the money that I made at Facet went to starting PairTree.
I love it. Such a badass entrepreneur. And how did you have the intuition and confidence to do it? What type of market research did you do?
Well, I did. I should back up. The first adoption that we went through our family, that's when I think the idea just kind of jumped into my head because this is way too
right. Important. There's got to be a better way. Yes.
And so that's when it just was kind of nagging in the back of my head for around 6 years. And then when we went through our second one with our daughter, same thing. And then I just started pro bono helping families go through it. And every time it was like the same thing, like, really, that's how it's done? I'm like, I know, feels like the Wild West, doesn't it? And so I just at a certain point, I was like, okay, this needs to be better and I need to do it. And so I started doing, research to make sure the market size would, be worthy of a business. And it is.
Clearly there's how many people are looking right now?
Yeah. There's about 5 million in the US, and that's expected to go up to 7 million by 2025 because the infertility rate is going up. And that's why venture capital is dumping money into reproductive technology. And, we're kind of the next step. Like people go through a certain amount of reproductive technology and they hit their breaking point for whatever reason, they move into our world.
Interesting. Wow. And how did you find your co-founder, Justin? Is he still with you?
Yeah, he's wonderful. So long story short, so I did all the market research and I started talking to VCs because I didn't want to bootstrap it. But then pandemic hit. I had all my VC meetings lined up for the first week of March of 2020.
Oh, of course.
Which is bad timing. So I was like, well, I'll build it, get some traction, and then go talk to VCs.
Which is better anyway, because you can have proof of concept, beta test it, kind of see if there's interest.
Yeah. And I was introduced to Jacob Kolker at the Allen Institute, who runs.
Yes, I love Jacob.
Yes, he's wonderful. And he's like, you should maybe, he introduced me to a couple other folks who all said you should go talk to TechStars and go through an accelerator. And so I did, I applied, I got in, and it was some of those investor conversations early that led to Justin. And they're like, there's a CTO that you should talk to. Because I'm a non-technical founder and I needed a technical co-founder.
For sure. To go build out the whole platform and product. Yeah. Yeah.
So Justin and I, we met, we started talking for about 4 months. It took me a while to convince him. I think once I got into TechStars, he was like, oh, okay.
There's a certain stamp of approval for sure.
Yeah, but it's like, hey, leave your, job with benefits and I can't pay you. But what if we change the world of adoption?
Yeah.
What if we make this world a better place? And so, and he fully subscribes to that. So he did, he left his.
Yeah, I love that. And what was your personal vetting process? Because when people have co-founders, I'm always interested in learning how they decide that not just, hey, I'm non-tech, you're tech, but also we want the same things. This is what we're thinking about from a culture standpoint and the whole story, like everything that you're facing right now. Did you guys vet each other or just trust?
Hugely. No, I mean, we talked early and deep about values and culture and, you know, what we want it to be out the gate and what we're hoping for. And also kind of division of roles and responsibilities. Like, I will do this, but you need to do this. And then there was, for sure, I mean, just like any marriage, there was just kind of a level of trust.
Yeah, there needs to be, because it's all like rolling the dice. And I'm not sure what the statistics are as far as, I mean, obviously marriage is like 50-50 and divorce, but like founders, I don't know, but I do hear stories because we work with so many startups of, you know, it not working out. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think
so. Do you guys have competitors?
We have competitors that touch on aspects of our business, but no one that we know about yet has been looking at adoption as comprehensively as we have.
Yeah.
Just being one company to help families navigate from start to, you know, we say from start to forever.
Yeah. Interesting. And so it's a subscription-based model where these families are paying $75. And what about once they match? Is there a fee on top of that?
We don't. And a lot of the industry.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I know, because we feel like that feels like a bounty. It's upset. And so we're like, no.
Right. It's like, you can get a goat for my baby. Like it's like a trade kind of platform. Interesting.
Yeah. So it makes it way more affordable for sure. Which your earlier point is one of the ways that we think will make it more equitable. Like, you know, for a long time, adoption has only been an option to people with wealth. And so in bringing the fees down, it makes it available to people.
Yeah. So this whole fundraising process, there's the idea that it was not going to happen successfully during COVID. And of course it did. We're feeling that as a recruiting firm. But did you do all of this over Zoom, and how much have you raised?
Yeah, so we coming out of TechStars, well, we thought we were going to have a really hard time because people were going to think of us as like a nonprofit, and I was going to talk to them about my ovaries, and like, this is not going to be easy for us.
Right, and you're pitching mostly to men. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, this is going to be tough, and it could not have been more opposite. We would get on. It was the height of COVID, so everything was on Zoom. But we'd get on these Zoom calls with VCs, and, you know, I came out the gate with a very vulnerable story. And within minutes, you know, we've had most VCs like, oh, my wife and I are going through that right now, or my best friend is going through that. And so it was way more relatable than I thought it was going to be. So we were lucky. We raised, in under 2 months from graduating TechStars, we raised 2.25 for our pre-seed.
Wow.
That was in July of 2021. And then around the holidays, we actually got preempted by this awesome firm who just led our seed round that we closed end of March.
Oh.
And so we closed 5.1 million.
On top of the two? Oh my gosh. And that money is going to be used for what? Primarily
the expansion of the home study product. That's such a huge opportunity. And then one of the things that's happening in the world today that we are also expanding into is embryo donors. So when families are going through IVF like they are today, and they have extra embryos that come out of their process, they have the options to discard them or to donate them. And I think this is really, really cool. But it used to be that they'd be like, yeah, donate them to a family that needs them. And it was completely anonymous. But thanks to 23andMe, there is no more anonymous donation. So embryo donor families are playing a role in choosing the families that their embryos go to. And
oh my gosh,
just like adoption.
This is crazy powerful stuff.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. So you've raised a ton of money. The fundraising process was pretty easy, especially even during COVID. All things that in my mind, the wind is not at your back, but it turned out that it was.
Yeah.
And you have female VCs also involved.
Yeah, we do. Well, Leslie Feinzag from Graham and Walker, we met her in TechStars, and I tell people that, you know, well, this happened with the lead of our pre-seed too, who are also two women. It's Urban Innovation Fund.
Yeah.
They both, they're moms, and they both, within 5 minutes of meeting them on Zoom, were asking us questions about what the product could be that were on our roadmap for 5 years down the road. Like they got it immediately. So
that's amazing. Leslie's awesome. She's a good friend, and I'm not surprised. She's smart, and she's got good intuitive instincts.
She's also intimidating. When I was
really
well, not now, but when I was meeting with her, because she is so smart.
Yeah,
and she has such a direct.
But she's so warm and
very.
Yeah, I'm glad that you have her involved. And tell me, do you have a board?
We do, but it's small right now. So it's just Justin, my co-founder, myself, and then Julie from Urban Innovation Fund, who is the lead for our pre-seed.
Yeah, well, that's great. Probably better to keep it small so that you can kind of drive things a little bit more.
Yeah.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about the numbers. I think that in researching this whole business, I didn't realize the statistics. So how many adoptive families do you currently have on the platform?
Right now we have around 210.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And how do you go about, I mean, you're a branding person. How do you, I guess, get in front of the families and expectant mothers? Is there partnerships, or you just go like how do you know who's on either side?
Yeah, so it's different dynamics for the kind of user type. For adoptive families, we actually partnered with a lot of the adoption attorneys in the U.S.
Okay.
And a lot of adoption agencies. So agencies, even though they're charging more money, a lot of them know that or contractually require their families to do some of their own outreach. So they recommend families use PairTree. Same thing with the adoption attorneys. And then adopting families, they do their research. Like they are researched in terms of options. So they find us.
Yeah.
Expectant
so you're working on SEO?
For sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, often. Yeah. That's SEO.
Oh, of course. And so as far as the matching process, I did read that you kind of implemented personality archetypes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do personality-based matching, and that one of the other things that happens in adoption today that people just don't know about is that 90% of adoptions are open. So adopting family and birth family, or adopting family and embryo donor family, will be together and connected for the rest of their lives. And so
they can get to know the kids.
Yeah. And and all of the research says that will create a healthier identity in the adoptee, which is what we all care the most about.
Yeah. And is that your personal situation?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean,
and are your children from the same mother?
No, totally separate families.
And so you're involved, both of these birth mothers are involved with your kids?
Yes. And fathers. Yeah.
Wow. And so what does that look like? Is it like Christmas and Easter, or if you're Jewish, like the Jewish holidays, like what is it? Or is it like, hey, you can come to the baseball game?
It's whatever you decide you want it to be. So we have one birth family who we are in touch with via email a couple times a year. And we have another birth family who come visit. We send presents back and forth. We text with them on a weekly basis. So it's literally, we just had our first FaceTime call so that our daughter could meet her half siblings.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So this personality kind of assessment, how did you decide which one to use, and why is that part of the process?
Yeah. So personality is the leading indicator of behavior. And so our expectant moms, that's why they come to a PairTree, is because they want to be able to see into the future. Like if I pick you, what does the future look like with you? And so, but so many of the profile sites were just, like pretty pictures, and that was it. And so we wanted to incorporate some kind of personality-based matching for expectant moms so that they had some meatier information on these adoptive families to decide who they even wanted to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the expectant moms also do the personality assessment to see if there's correlations?
They don't. We're launching the first adoption platform in a month or two, and that will be an available option for expectant moms. But a lot of times they know what they want. They knew what they wanted. They just didn't have the words. And so with Carl Jung's behavioral none of the personality types are bad. They're just all very different. So if a expectant mom is like, I want my baby to, and this has happened, like, I've never been on a plane. I want my baby to be on a plane and travel and see the world. And you're like, oh, well, that's the explorer personality type. Here's all those families.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so
how many, do you know that personality assessment well enough to kind of give us a couple of different ideas around it? I'm sure you do, but yeah.
Well, we're actually getting to the point where I would almost feel confident saying that, you know, with a high level of confidence, we can predict people that are more likely to adopt based on this personality test, because there are a few personalities that really rise to the top in terms of people that are looking to adopt, or at least there's a set of characteristics that.
And what are those?
I won't give you the actual statistics, but there's two archetypes. There's one's the neighbor and one's the caregiver. I've
done it before, and I think I'm the caregiver.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, see, then you probably have it in you somewhere that you would be open to this idea of adoption. But
I say it all the time, only because I want more babies, and I'm 50, so I can't do that. But like, I also feel like I can't take a baby away from somebody who can't have children. Like, it feels selfish a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you know, but there's expectant moms that only are looking for families that have kids because they want to make sure their kid has siblings.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But we have expectant moms, you know, choose parents for a variety. I mean, there's expectant moms that chose a dentist because she had bad teeth and she thought her kid might have bad teeth.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. This is a whole thing. And so, are you open to taking kids who have been exposed to, like, a mom that's got an addiction to drugs? And, you know, what about if those moms come onto the site? What do you do?
Yeah. I mean, we allow it, and it's up to the adoptive families to determine that, not us.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we provide a lot of education to adoptive families, and we're about to offer even more, but a lot of education around, you know, like, what happens if there's been some substance abuse.
Right. Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, we asked and make sure it's disclosed.
Yeah, that's important, probably, I'm guessing, like, obviously. So it sounds like there's definitely some differentiators between you and your competitors. What specifically, I guess, makes you different?
So for sure, the personality-based matching makes us different. But the other two that are worth noting is we are a carrot fertility partner. So in a perfect world, we think these adoption journeys should be covered by insurance benefits. And so our kind of first step towards that was partnering with Carrot. So all of our fees are reimbursable if a company uses Carrot for their family building benefits. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is we started something from day one called the 5% Fund. So 5% of all of our fees go to organizations that support lifetime healing for birth moms.
That's amazing. Continues to inspire. I love it.
Yeah.
So getting back to your fundraising and raising all this money, like, how are you planning to compete in this crazy war on talent for kind of product development and engineering? I'm guessing those are going to be big.
Well, it is big, and we are competing. I mean, engineers so hard, especially in Seattle, because we can't compete with Facebook salaries and Amazon salaries. What we do have, which I think has worked to our favor, is we have this, you know, pretty strong mission that people, and you can almost see it on when we're meeting with them, that they are like in on the mission.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of people's priority, and having done this for almost 30 years, which makes me like old lady, but whatever. I've done it for a long time, and people's drivers have changed as far as how they make decisions, and the pandemic has amplified that. It's not always about comp. Of course, this market's become nuts with, you know, like Amazon and Twitter and all the companies having their engineering based here. But a lot of people come in and say they just want a mission-based company. So what makes somebody, I guess, a culture fit or culture add for your company?
So it's kind of three things that we look for on a regular basis. You have to be able to like move fast and be in startup culture. Like, this is not like, we don't have processes and frameworks built. Like, you're gonna have to help us build those. And so if that's the world that you like living in, awesome. Ethics. So we say, like, if we don't have ethics in this industry, we have nothing. Because there's a lot of bad apples that got into adoption just to make money. And And so we're not shortcutting anything. If it's not the right thing to do, we're not doing it, whether investors like it or not. And then the third one is just, we call it fierce optimism.
Yeah.
You have to have like fierce optimism in this industry. And, because you hear a lot of bad stories, you hear a lot of wonderful good stories, but you hear like people are, wow, that is a new level of low that I did not know existed.
Right. I mean, even on this podcast, my mouth has been like, dropped that there's fake expectant mothers and just all of the things that you have to navigate. So what are the long-term plans for the business? And I'm not going to ask you about your exit strategy because that's so annoying when people ask it. I'm like, I'm really passionate about what I'm building and I'm not thinking about that. But I am curious about, I'm guessing you just want to dominate the industry.
Yeah. So I think what we say is where multiple family trees are coming together, we want to be at the center of those journeys. So surrogacy, egg donor, sperm donor, embryo donor, adoption. I think for us, that's kind of where we see the world going. And, that has been the more unconventional way of building a family. And we see that for sure becoming the more conventional way to build a family in the future.
Yeah. Well, so you've got these kids, 8 and 5. You're building this awesome company. How do you find time for you, which your mental health, and what do you do to kind of unwind, relax in general?
It goes back to my rom-coms, my jam.
You can just escape into the movie. I love it.
I do. So our life is insane from about 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. Just insane work, parenting. And then at 8 p.m., my husband and I have a little bit of time to ourselves. And if we don't start working again, which is sad, but it happens a lot.
So with these kids, what's your dream weekend, or I guess even just a typical weekend? Are they also sporty spice, or what are they into?
They're super sporty. My 8-year-old super sporty, and my 5-year-old is getting there, but she's just crazy creative.
Yeah.
And they both love music. And so for me, I love just pajamas until 11 and pancakes and not doing anything, because that is rare for us.
Yeah. It's so funny. I never listen to parenting books, or if, I'm not one of those. I just kind of go with my gut. And recently I've been listening to a book on Audible about parenting, and they talk about just being. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm over the top executing on tasks. And then I drive them, which is typical of being a mom of teenagers. Mm-hmm. And they just were like, the dream is to just be, even if you're just watching a movie together. So I love that answer. It's so good.
I'm an efficiency junkie too. I plan to go out in the grocery store. And if I'm not ordering groceries while the kids are in the bathtub or something like that, I don't feel.
My parents were just with me for the weekend, and my mom and I are in the mall, and I'm shopping, and I'm pre-ordering stuff at another store, and I'm getting our Starbucks at this thing, and I'm talking on the phone, and she's like, oh my parents were like, what is happening? You're doing too much. But that's me in my element, I got to say. When people criticize it, you do too much, I'm like, well, that's me, at least in this chapter of my life. There will be a season to chill, but it's not right now.
Even when I'm rom-comming, I'm still folding laundry.
Of course. Of course. Or even I'm going to get on the bike while I'm rom-comming, or I'm going to.
I'm cooking tomorrow's dinner now while I have my earbuds in watching Jane Austen.
Yes, I love it. I find you super relatable, also inspiring. I'm curious, my ultimate question is, what fuels you?
Well, honestly, I'm probably one of the most grateful people you'll ever meet. And that probably stems from, feeling when you have a dad that's dying, you're grateful for every day. And so
I'm sure
exponentially grateful. And so when I see people do things for other people, or I see something wonderful like that, it lifts me for days.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.